So it has begun. Barely 5 days after the new government took power, there were early indications of not just the warnings that have been issued by a lot of people, including myself, about road user charging paper mile being on its way, if not already, signed off, and also predictions in my book. Don't forget my book, ULEZ Files. In fact, in my book, the ULEZ Files, which this is the thing about, I know it's called the ULEZ Files, but it's actually not about ULEZ. It's actually set 3 years after the expansion of ULEZ. It's set in 2026. And in 2026, the main character in the book is waiting for the news, the confirmation that road user charging paper mile is being announced and confirmed for London. And then, of course, the action then kicks off. It is a fictional novel, of course. Now, well, I say it's fictional, but it seems like it may not be fictional, because it could be that this is definitely happening. And why do we say that? Why do I say that? Well, because as soon as the government took over, the new government, the Labour government took over, it was already being advised that this is what it needs to do in order to fill not only the current financial hole that it's got and all the commitments that it's making through, of course, increased taxation upon the motorists, because the motorist, of course, is always the easiest target. So let's just make more money off the motorists, even though, we're paying through every orifice already for every mile that we dare to drive, but let's tax them some more. And also because of the forthcoming hole in the taxes from motorists that is coming because of EVs, the cars that they want everybody to drive, the electric cars. So what's going on? I'll explain right after this.
A brown car guy. Brown car guy.
Okay, so this was a story in the Express, and this was actually dated Tuesday, July the 9th. So about 4 days after Labour actually took power. And the headline was, Labour urged to introduce new paper mile car tax system with certain drivers targeted. A new paper mile car tax system would target electric vehicle owners in an attempt to fill gaps in public finances. Now, right at the top, we're starting with electric vehicles here, but of course you know that would only be the start of that. I'll talk about the report and we'll come back to that, but you know that's obviously will never just be restricted to one type of car. So inevitably everybody would be affected by it. So where has this come from? Weirdly enough, it's come from so-called a top civil servant working for the Department for Transport. And weirdly, this person, who I won't name because I don't know the name, because I don't know who that was, and I couldn't find the tweets, maybe they've been deleted, I don't know. But it was reported in the Telegraph originally. If you know who it was, put it in the comments below. It just says as a top civil servant, because they didn't name it in this report, a top civil servant working for the Department of Transport said that the government had to find another tax for electric vehicles because many are paying nothing to get behind the wheel at the moment. Of course, they are being charged because, to buy an electric vehicle is a very expensive proposition. And then, of course, to charge it, you're paying for the electricity. Now, if you're charging at home, you're not paying a lot of tax. I think it's just 5%. But if you're charging at a public charger, then it is heavily taxed. And so that's quite a bit more. In fact, it was worked out that actually the cost per mile of running an EV, if you're only using public chargers, is actually higher than fueling a petrol car, which to some extent defeats the financial argument of an EV. Anyway, so as it says, there's a series of messages posted to a social media site, X, Twitter. The civil servant pointed out that the mileage-based car tax system was needed. And they suggested that prices could be adjusted so that drivers traveling into busy areas pay more. So if you're traveling into town or whatever, you'd pay more. If you're outside in the rural areas or small villages and stuff, you'd pay less, but you'd still pay. And this, of course, they rightly point out in this newspaper article, would be a blow to commuters because, of course, you generally drive into more congested areas to get to work. So you're having to pay more to get to work, is what basically that amounts to. Under current rules, motorists with zero-emission vehicles pay no form of tax, and it can be seen as a major incentive to make the switch. Well, it can, but hang on a minute. Anyway, according to the Telegraph, because that's where originally this report was taken from, the civil servant said that the obvious answer is to find another tax so electric motorists can keep paying their share, but electric vehicles don't use special electricity that you can tax. Well, they are taxing public charges, so that's not entirely true. In fact, there's a call for them to reduce the tax on public charges to incentivize people to switch to electric vehicles. Anyway, I'll continue, but electric vehicles don't use the special electricity that you can tax, and the purchase or registration tax won't restrain gridlock. We've just gone to talking about how to raise revenue for government funding to gridlock. How did you make that jump all of a sudden? But anyway, carries on. This is again a quote. So you need some kind of per mile cost, and that leads you back to road pricing. The principle is you pay a small fee for every mile you drive, just like you effectively do through fuel taxes today. So finally, at least a civil servant admits that, we do actually pay per mile already at the moment. We do that through fuel taxation, which is very, very heavy. It goes on, and this is an actual quote. In the fancier versions, you adjust the prices so you pay less on empty roads and more on busy ones. Now, the Treasury, this was the newspaper saying, the Treasury is facing a bill of £25 billion shortfall in public finances directly as a result of motorists switching to EVs. I think it's a little optimistic because, again, if you look at the rate of adoption of EVs, it has slowed down. It's mostly fleet sales and company car drivers that are doing it, but it's still growing, definitely still increasing. But out of a near 40 million vehicle car park in the UK, we're talking about 1 million vehicles that are electric at the moment. So we still have a ways to go.
Hey, are you liking this video? Then make sure that you hit the like button. That's really important. Also, tell everybody.
Right, so what they say is that the electric car drivers don't pay road tax, which is VED, Vehicle Excise Duty, and of course they don't pay fuel duty. Having said that, and the report does point that out, electric car vehicle owners will have to pay road tax VED from April 2025. Now, it's a weird sort of setup because they will pay the minimum amount on the emissions basis. I may have to do a separate video because it's a bit complicated how they're going to work that out. But ultimately, by the second year of the car's purchase, an EV that is, I think they'll be paying between £160 and £190 a year on tax on that car. And because the emissions are still rated at 0, it won't change. It will just be that, well, unless it goes up every year. The other question somebody asked me recently is, will they pay luxury car tax? Because at the moment there's a luxury car tax, so anything over £40,000, petrol, diesel, you have to pay an additional tax on that. Yes, they will. So for new cars, for new electric vehicles from April 2025, they will have to pay, although they don't currently, but they will have to pay. And as most EVs actually are over £40,000, then that's going to hit most of them. So if you are thinking of buying a brand new EV, you need to do that before April next year. That would be a top tip. But like I said, I might do a separate video explaining more clearly how they're going to be hit by taxes. Don't forget also, another thing that maybe not a lot of people realize, but which is happening, is that from December the 25th next year, so Christmas Day next year, actually from Boxing Day next year, they will no longer have free congestion charging in London. I believe if you're a resident in London, you will get a discount. But if you live outside of London and you think, I can just drive my EV in it, so if you commute into London, you drive your EV into London, you will no longer be paying, it'll no longer be free. You'll be paying for that. So keep that in mind as well. So despite the fact that they will be paying road tax from 2025, the civil servant predicted that any pay-per-mile scheme would likely be unpopular among motorists. Oh, no kidding, I figured that much out. And in fact, there was a poll from Govt And they said that over half, that's 53% of British drivers, were against the introduction of a pay per mile system. Yay! No surprise there. Seriously, right? While a similar 52.82% felt that pay per mile charge would be used as a way of increasing tax. Well, it is tax, you know, this sort of way of increasing tax. It's hitting you with another tax. That's what it is. Meanwhile, 51.89% said it would be unfair to those who have to drive more. So that's a fair understanding of people that need to either drive for work or need to commute or work in the delivery industry or etc., where they do actually need to drive their vehicles. And then 51.45% claimed that it would make road tax very complicated. So I guess here the people are alluding to the fact that, you know, you'll have a VED system, you'll have a road tax system, then you'll have this on top of that, and it will make things really, you can't actually, you know, the other thing about the way we are with road tax at the moment, yes, I know that you have tax on fuel. The more you drive, the more fuel you put in, you kind of take that as read, you kind of understand that. But if you're a business, or if you work, or if you commute, then it's going to be really hard to predict this way how much your annual bill is going to be. And you may find yourself, you know, exceeding, you know, your budgetary constraints by not being able to estimate the true cost of motoring. So the civil servant suggested a tax could be introduced to future buyers of electric cars only, meaning that early adopters would not face fees. So what they mean by that is that if you've already, so there's another reason that if you're going to buy an EV, buy it now, although I don't think that this will happen until 2026. But what they're saying is that if you already got an EV, you won't be hit with this tax. So you may just have the VED tax that's coming anyway in April next year. But in terms of the pay per mile, I think that what the civil servant is suggesting is that it would only start from a certain date, and then it would only hit that. But then again, that seems terribly unfair. You know, or you just, you know, and the trade in new cars would completely collapse. And again, it goes against the whole idea of governments and policymakers and legislators trying to clean up urban pollution by changing cars over to electric. But actually, by doing this sort of stuff, and even by suggesting this sort of stuff, you are immediately disincentivizing people to consider making that switch to electric. Again, the civil servant stressed that this decision had to be made slowly. Decisions had to be made quickly, actually, with the opportunity to introduce fees slowly fading. The person said there's a perfect window for doing this, plenty of EV sales, but not many EVs already on the road. It's well above my pay grade. People like me exist to deliver the will of elected governments, not second guess it. The only thing I will say is that the UK will be firmly outside that window by 2029, so whatever the choice, the new government will be making it. So I think that's just confirming what I've always said, that 2026 is when pay per mile will come along. And as I said, that I don't think, you know, ultimately, once they have this system in place, you know, it can't just be restricted to electric cars. I think that ultimately they'll end up switching the whole road tax system over to, you know, road user charging pay per mile. So that will hit everybody eventually, even if they are mooting it, or at least one civil servant is mooting it, as for EVs only. And this is also the fact that it's going to be so complex, so complicated and costly to introduce is highlighted by our old friend Howard Cox of Fair Fuel UK. If you remember, he was standing for election as London Mayor last year. Obviously he didn't win, but he was the sort of car guy standing up for motorists in that election. And well, he has got Fair Fuel UK, and he says that the changes would lead to massive uncertainty over how much drivers pay to use Britain's roads. And he claimed that the cost to set up the scheme would be off the scale, and didn't rule out motorists being hit with higher tax charges than they currently pay. So it's almost as weird. It's like you're taxing to pay for taxing. That's what might happen, if you see what I mean. It's like you have to pay to set up this very complex system, and to do that you'd have to tax people more to pay for the system that you need to set up in order to tax them, if that makes sense. So Howard said the cost of administering pay per mile and its accuracy in ensuring drivers do not pay more tax than they are now will be impossible to control. I don't necessarily think that the idea is to stop them from paying more tax than they are now. I think the idea is to make sure that they pay more tax than they do now. But anyway, I see what he's saying though. It's going to be very difficult to ensure that it is accurate and that it does it properly, because there's different systems. Either you use the cameras, the NPR cameras, you put tracking systems in every car, which is actually, you know, the system's already there in EVs, that's for sure. So you could easily do that. You've got black boxes in the cars and stuff like that. And then he continues and he makes a very good point. And there is a little matter of methodology and privacy. And that will inflict a massive uncertainty of actual cost on drivers, with a big brother nanny state knowing every inch of where we travel. Now, aside from that, is also the fact that, you know, we already have this issue where, you know, some manufacturers are having to take cars off sale, current cars off sale, because it's too costly to update the software for data protection requirements, which are now a fundamental part of cars. Because of course cars are interconnected, they're gathering your data. As we get more and more stuff in the cars, more and more AI, they're collecting more data. What's happening with your data? Your car, of course, knows where you're going, what you're doing. You know, it's collecting all of that data anyway, right? So you have to then have privacy notices, and then the car has to be safeguarded against hacking, against people accessing that data without your permission. So again, that is just a can of worms when you then throw in this level and you go, well, okay, well, you've done that, but on the other hand, the government will have to have access to where you're going, when you're going, what time you're driving, where you're driving, how often you're driving, because that's how they will tax you. So again, it really is a can of worms, but it's a can of worms which will be solved if there's enough money at stake. And clearly, £25 billion plus I say, because they'll raise more with that system, there is a lot of money at stake. How it goes on, the cost of implementation will be off the scale, meaning that small businesses, logistics and low-income families will be financially crucified. Yeah, I mean, so that's basically what the report is saying. That later report with Howard Cox was also in the Express, but that came out a bit later on, so I should have just told you. That was a later news article that was follow-up to the other article. That was dated Saturday, 13 July, so that was from last Saturday. So there you see that it's basically what we've been saying, what we've been telling people. All of these cars, all of these people, every single mile, well, forget mile, but every single meter that they move, they will end up paying for them. This is inevitable, this is coming. We've been saying this despite the fact that people that have been standing up for elections and stuff like that have been saying, no, we're not doing that, we have no plans to do that, we won't be introducing it. But we know for a fact that research has happened, staff has been employed, you know, plans have already been put in place. So all of this is coming, all of this is happening. Is it inevitable? Well, that's down to you guys, isn't it? You know, ultimately it's down to, you know, making your voices heard about whether, you know, this is a democracy. Do you want it? Do you not want it? You have to make your voices heard. It's as simple as that. Good luck, everyone. Catch you all in the next video.
Check this out, guys. It's my book. It's my first novel, and it's written for car fans like you. It's a fun political action thriller. It's full of cool cars and spectacular action. Get your copy now at Amazon.com.
Feeling alive, healing drove shifts and engines that thrive. But now we're stuck in this automated cage. Silent engines, no roar, no rage. Policies and politics driving us insane. Fuel costs rising, God, what a pain. They say it's for the planet, for the air we breathe. But take away our car keys, you'll see us see. Red line, let your life a quarter mile at a time. See for 10 seconds or less, it ain't no crime. Flat out, everything fades with pace. The body moving through time and space, that's where you need it. It creeps up on you. It's what car people will never get. It's what you and I know with no debate. Cars got soul, cars are alive. If you don't believe it, you don't drive. New motors with the quiet, clean ways. Digital driver's aids, it's a lifeless haze. We long for the days of visceral engagement, but every gear shift was a damn statement. Red line, live your life a quarter mile at a time. See for 10 seconds or less, it ain't no crime. Flat out, everything fades with pace. The body moving through time and space, that's where you need it. It creeps up on you. I'm getting the place. I walk away. If you don't look back, it ain't the one, no way. The world's trying to take away our cars, it's true. But we're stuck in a quandary, not knowing what to do. Red line, live your life a quarter mile at a time. See for 10 seconds or less, it ain't no crime. Flat out, living they can't take. We wanna drive free, feel the wind in our face. So live for the moment, embrace the chase. Drive free, it's more than just a line. There's no shortcut home, it's how we shine. There's no easy way out, we hold on tight to the cars we love, and for freedom we fight. Red line, live your life a quarter mile at a time. Free for 10 seconds or less, it ain't no crime. Flat out, everything fades with pace. The body moving through time and space, that's where you need it. Stay in the race.
Shout out time, guys. Thank you so much. Hey, if you enjoy my content, why not get involved? Buy me a coffee. You can do that at either of these links. Or if you're watching on YouTube, buy me a thanks or take out a membership. It all helps. It really does.